ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Welcome back in to Acadiana's Best Sports Leader. I'm Scott Prather, and joining me at this time, friend of the program, great guy, very successful, Tony Knopp. He is the founder and CEO of Invite Manager. He's been cited as an expert in technology and sports and CRM and compliance by NBC, CBS, Fox, CSNBC, CNBC, Yahoo. I could go on and on. A lot of acronyms: Sports Business Journal, ESPN, the magazine, the LA Times, and everything you want to know about tickets in the sports marketplace. Tony is the guy to ask those questions to. So, Tony, with all of that being said, man, how are you?
Life is good. Busy.
Well, I imagine it is because, the brackets just, they came out Sunday night, and there's so much excitement around the NCAA tournament. It truly is one of the one of the most premier sporting events. I mean, it makes the sport of college basketball. All these fans that are on the fringe suddenly all tune in to see these games. There's really nothing else like it in any other sport. And with that comes interest from folks wanting to go to the game. So I look forward to just digging into that with you and picking your brain about it. But as always, before we get started, maybe some new listeners that haven't heard you on before, explain to them exactly what you guys do at Invite Manager.
So we make client entertainment easy and improve the ROI for companies of all sizes. What that means is many of these companies have sports tickets that they use to take customers to events. We make it easier for them to get those tickets to those customers and understand what the value is. So we see 30 million tickets a year that come through our system and have a really good idea of what companies are buying, why they're buying it, and who they're taking. And the reality is companies are buying the most sought-after tickets because that's their job, right? I want to get Scott Deere. I got to take him somewhere he wants to go. And if he wants to go to the Final Four, which he likely does, that's what I'm looking to do.
I guess I watched the show Mad Men when it was on for years, and seeing the advertisers take out their clients for fun, and it was always like, what is this client into? And so many are into sports, and even if they're not necessarily into the sport, Tony, the idea of just being part of this giant event where so many other kind of bigwigs in the corporate world are going to be is appealing to a lot of companies that are looking to make big-time bucks. And sports at the highest level, not just in this country but around the world, offers that opportunity. And you're the guy that kind of organizes all of that. I guess is kind of in a vacuum a good way to explain what you do, although it entails a lot more, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the funnest part about it. What makes March Madness such a unique event, everything has its draw, right? Right at the end of March Madness, we have the Masters, and then we have the Kentucky Derby a month later, and each event has its own different draw, right? The Masters is you're going to this small town, it's all about the golf, it's super hospitality-driven, very exclusive, only so many people there. Now, the Final Four in March Madness is the opposite, right? As you guys have seen down in Louisiana, and as you see in other cities, it's basically a giant road trip for each one of these colleges, and the passion is so intense because every year it's, generally somebody different. And what makes it so exciting is that we don't know where our team's going to go until the 5 days before they go, right? They get announced on Sunday, and there's games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that start right away. And it creates this month-long experience where you have all these different people from all of these different schools and regions coming together and rooting. And it's really an event that it supersedes and extends beyond basketball, right? How many people do you know? Let me ask you a simple question. How many people do you know that fill out brackets that couldn't name 3 players on one team?
99% of the people that fill out brackets.
Exactly. I mean, they've done a phenomenal job of creating this experience that goes above and beyond what we're used to. What you're really looking for when you're doing an event for somebody is you're looking for an event that, is more. It's about more than just the sport, right? It becomes something that becomes part of pop culture, and March Madness is pop culture.
From a corporate standpoint, and you kind of alluded to it briefly a minute ago, how does the NCAA tournament and I guess the Final Four specifically, how is it different than the Super Bowl and the Masters and the Kentucky Derbies?
Very different. Here's why. The Masters, the Kentucky Derby, and the Super Bowl, it's interesting you pick those 3. Those 3 are static events, right? The Kentucky Derby and the Masters, they never leave. They're in the same place every year no matter what. It's about the event. It doesn't matter who the participants are. Those are going to change over year after year. The Super Bowl is a static event that's announced 5 years in advance. So I know where the Super Bowl is going to be 3 years from now. Now I do, so I can start to plan for it. The Final Four it's a little bit different because, and it has some similarities to the Super Bowl because we have no idea who's going to partake in it, right? And not only do we have no idea, we're not going to know until the week before.
Sure.
Super Bowl, at least you have 2 weeks. The Final Four, you don't know if your team's going until Sunday. And the Final Four is on Friday or Saturday. You got to be there, right? Saturday, Monday. You don't have that much time, and it creates this experience where you have the fans going from city to city, right? I'm going to the round of 64 and then the round of 32, and then I'm moving to the next city for the round of 16 and 8, and then moving to the next city for the Final Four. We didn't know we were going to be there, and it becomes this just giant, almost festival-like atmosphere. And that's why it's so unique and so much different than, the Super Bowl, the Masters, and the Kentucky Derby, right? The Kentucky Derby is an experience for specific people. The Masters is golfer's paradise. March Madness is about tribalism, right? You see these people who are just tribal about the schools that they follow and how passionate they are. It's just so fun. It creates such a unique environment around the event. It's like a fishbowl. It's such a great event for everybody. As you guys know, New Orleans has hosted it numerous times.
Tony Knopp, our guest, founder and CEO of Invite Manager, Scott Prather here with him on ESPN 1420 and .com. You just mentioned New Orleans hosting it a number of times. Phoenix this year, how is Phoenix as a host city for an event like this?
Phenomenal. I'm going to upset people in Phoenix. New Orleans is a better host city because it's more compact, right? It's not as spread out. San Antonio isn't very spread out. You're looking for cities where you can get all these people together in one place. Phoenix is just a phenomenal destination, right? There's enough to do tourism-wise. There's enough to do convention-wise. They do a very good job of holding everybody together. The only issue with Phoenix is the stadium is a little bit out there, right? When they're playing out in Glendale, you're 25, 30 minutes from where most people are staying.
Is there not? Is the ideal host cities for the Final Four, and maybe you can name a few for us, is it kind of the same list you would have for the Super Bowl?
It is, because you're looking for somewhere that people can travel to easily, right? You do need to come out to the West Coast occasionally, and Phoenix is really the best choice out here because they have the facilities, and it's easy to not get lost into it as you move everybody in. But, New Orleans, Atlanta, places that are more central to the East Coast where more of the dominant teams have been playing recently, that's where you generally see really popular Final Fours. Indianapolis did a great job with the Final Four. Everybody really enjoyed their time there. But the Final Four, as opposed to the Super Bowl, has traveled much more, right? The Super Bowl is now starting to spread it out away from the tropical destinations that they had in the past, where it used to be the rotation of San Diego, New Orleans, Florida, South Florida, that sort of thing. And now it's spreading out. The Final Four has been doing that forever, right? They've been to Seattle, they've been to Indianapolis, they've been to Detroit, they've been almost everywhere.
Of everyone in attendance at the Final Four, because I think, I'll ask you twofold. Of everyone in attendance at these first round, the regional games, the Sweet 16 sites, and the Final Four, and if it varies between each, you can let us know, but what percentage of those patrons are diehard fans of the schools participating, are locals, and are from the corporate world?
So what's interesting about that, you mentioned a couple of events earlier. You mentioned the Kentucky Derby, the Super Bowl, and the Masters. The Kentucky Derby, the Super Bowl, and the Masters don't have a lot of diehard fans, right? The majority of the crowd is not traveling to Kentucky to Louisville to see their horse run. The majority of the fans at the Masters are not going because they've been huge Rory McIlroy fans their whole life, and they absolutely have to see him play the Masters. Right, the Super Bowl is bought so far in advance by so many corporate buyers that less than 50% of the building is actually rooting for their team. The Final Four is different. The Final Four is the majority of the fans are rooting for their team. Right, they travel, they're wearing their gear, and they're ready to go. So it's actually the fan environment you have at the Final Four, as far as crowd noise, that sort of thing, in the ebb and flow of a game versus the Super Bowl, it's definitely more boisterous.
So with the demand,
and locals check it out too.
Yeah.
The best way to check it out, if you're a local, to be totally honest, is wait until a couple of teams lose, and then everybody just sells their tickets, right?
Right,
If I
right.
travel to New Orleans and I want to see, Michigan State and they get bounced in the Final Four, I'm walking out the door selling my ticket. I don't need to stick around for Monday to watch the team that beat my team play against another team.
No doubt. I remember Kansas and Syracuse and Carmelo Anthony's 1 year at Q's. I was living in New Orleans. Marquette and Texas fans, they all took off on Sunday. They're like, we're out of here. And I was in college, and there were college students that were getting tickets to the national championship game for like cheap. I was like, go if you can do it, go for it.
It just comes down to the fact that I didn't need to see that very first game, and the team got bounced, and so now I'll come check it out. And it's really a great opportunity and something you should check out when you get to those early round games. Those early round games are generally much more affordable. You get to be a part of the experience, and it's really fun. Even if you're not rooting for one of the teams, you're going to see a team that's going to come out of that bracket and go at least to the Elite Eight, right? Because just based on who you're seeing. And it's fun because you feel like you're a part of their journey now, right? And I only say that. I'm not trying to sell anybody on it. I don't get a dime if people buy tickets to the Final Four or not. It doesn't affect my business at all, right? Corporations do it. That's different. What I'm saying is I've been there a number of times for my job, and I've been very happy I have for that reason. It gives me the opportunity to feel like I'm a part of that journey for them. And a game I maybe wouldn't have watched earlier or would have sparsely watched, I sit down and say, I remember that kid. I remember when they won the game, last week in Anaheim where I was. And you start to root for them. It's contagious. It's really fun.
ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Scott Prather here, joined by our friend of the program, Tony Knopp, founder and CEO of Invite Manager. You mentioned those first-round games, the regional sites, and then the Sweet 16 sites. What's is there a hard demand to any of those in the corporate world, or is it pretty much the Final Four?
No, there's a hard demand. It depends on the teams, right? When you get super brackets, so to speak, that are local, you get a big demand, right? If North Carolina is playing close to home and they're playing Kentucky in the Elite Eight, that can be a very hot ticket, and we can see that go up. It's a very responsive event, right? Events that are more responsive, like the World Series, like the Final Four, where you don't know who the participants are until the last minute, and it's not like the Super Bowl where it's a destination. Those generally do have a pretty good corporate presence because now it gives me an opportunity to go to the event everybody's talking about, right? That's the goal when you're taking a customer out. People always say, like, well, it's a boondoggle, and you guys are taking the best tickets. Well, of course we are. That's the goal, right? My intent is to get time with somebody at an event that they couldn't get to otherwise, and those are generally very sought-after events.
You mentioned the excitement, like the fact that you enjoy the Final Four so much, and in your line of work, Tony, you've gotten to go to all of the major sporting events all over the world, and we were talking about the Super Bowl with you beforehand, and I always have to take the opportunity being down here in Saints country to remind everybody that the Atlanta Falcons blew a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. But you said you weren't sure if you were going to go this year, and you had been working nonstop. And to an average fan out there, they're like, well, why wouldn't you? Well, it's kind of like when with me when I'm just enthralled in sports and it's my job. In the summertime when I get a week off, I'm probably not going to go to a sporting event, right? I'm gonna go down to the lake or something. So it's kind of like that with you. Did you end up going, and why do you kind of feel different about? I'm not sure if I'm going to go to the Super Bowl. Whereas if you get a chance to the Final Four, you just love going every year.
I am going to be at the Final Four. I enjoy the Final Four. It's I almost went to the Pac-12 tournament for an event last night. I sent a couple people from the office instead. I love the Final Four. I love the feel of it. It's close. It's Phoenix. I will be there. It's going to be phenomenal. I don't care who's playing. I did not go to the Super Bowl. I ended up sending 3 people from our team to the Super Bowl, one of which was a huge Patriots fan. So once they got in, I kind of gave him my spot. So he had a great experience. We'll put it that way.
Well, hopefully he wasn't
enjoyed the comeback as much. He enjoyed the comeback as much and maybe more as you enjoyed the collapse.
Yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, it doesn't sound like he was Mark Wahlberg who left early and gets his fan card.
Oh, no, he was there the whole time. Yep.
Tony Knopp, our guest. All right, Tony. I'm guessing the answer to this is yes. Your favorite major sporting event in the States is the Final Four. Is it also your favorite major sporting event in the world, or does the World Cup or Olympics pass it?
My favorite sporting event in the States is Texas-Oklahoma football.
Really? The Red River rivalry is
I
it?
love it. The Red River game at the Texas State Fair.
All right.
And a few times. I took my wife and family once. It's phenomenal. I love that sporting event. It's definitely one of my favorites. I like the Pebble Beach tournament too. As far as like globally, what's my favorite thing to do? I actually like going to the international soccer matches, just because I don't care about the game that much. I enjoy it. I know who the great players are, but I don't have an eye for the game. But the environment is just phenomenal. It's so fun to go to those international rivalries. I mean, the game that happened yesterday that nobody in the States is really talking about is Barcelona coming back and beating PSG 6-1.
Yeah, Barcelona was like the Patriots
yesterday. Come and ask me. They say, hey, you kind of follow, soccer. Is that a big comeback? And I tell them that, Paris Saint-Germain is one of the highest paid teams in the world, well over $150 million in payroll. It's not like these guys are a bunch of stiffs that rolled over. Their top guys are making 25, 30, or making more money than Tom Brady. They probably have 5 guys on that team making more money than Tom Brady. And they blew a 4-goal lead. So I love that stuff. It's so fun to watch.
It'd be like the Warriors this year if they blew a 3-1 lead again type of deal.
It was even more. Yeah, I mean, it would be like blowing a 3-1 lead with a 30-point lead in the third quarter.
There you go. Well, let's remind everyone the Falcons did blow a 25-point lead late in the third quarter of the Super Bowl. Tony Knopp, only a few more for you, man. Not too long after the Final Four, you mentioned it, the Masters. Is this the hardest sporting event to get tickets to? How difficult is it?
It's not, to get tickets directly without buying them through a ticket broker, yes, it's definitely the hardest. And there's nothing even in its atmosphere, right? You're not going to get a ticket directly from Augusta National in your lifetime. You're not a member. You're not on the list. If you want to put your name on the list now, maybe your son will get tickets 60 years from now. So as far as that goes, yes, it's the hardest primary ticket to get on the market. As far as the hardest secondary ticket to get on the market, if you're trying to buy something and you're trying to get it from, brokers, that's a little different. The World Cup finals can be very difficult to get tickets to, depending on where they are, that sort of thing. But it's, as far as if you want to buy a ticket for a reasonable price, yes, you're never going to see a reasonable price in your lifetime for Augusta National.
Is it similar for the Kentucky Derby, or is that totally different?
The Kentucky Derby is interesting because they have something for everybody there, right? You can go be in the infield of the Kentucky Derby for $55, and there's a bunch of people with their shirts off running around, partying like it's Mardi Gras, right? And then you can go and be in the tables where you have Wes Welker throwing money around. So, the Kentucky Derby is a little different because they have something for everybody. You can do the Kentucky Derby on a budget. You cannot do the Masters on a budget, right? It's the cheapest ticket you're getting for the Masters is $400 for one day, and you're not getting in for less. Whereas, a lot of these other events, you can get in, you just don't have a very good seat, right? You sit far away, or you're sitting in the infield, you don't have to pay very much money for it.
The Kentucky Derby is literally like an outdoor casino because there's betting, and you've got a lot of different socioeconomic classes all kind of mixed together 100%. In different parts.
They sell beer on the street there. You walk down the street into the Kentucky Derby, and those guys selling Bud Light cans for $1 out of a cooler. I'm certain they're not licensed.
I got you.
And then you walk into the building, and you go into the table suites where it's $15,000 for the table for 8 people. I mean, it's just such a giant difference. It's such a cross section. It's fascinating. It is a fascinating event.
$1 Schlitz in one part and $1,000 mint julep in another.
100%.
So
and they demand to sell the mint juleps there in glass. So imagine a sporting event where they're giving glass. All you do is hear mint julep glasses shattering all day long.
I can't
People are dropping them left and right.
ESPN1420.com. Well, speaking of food, real quick, one more note on the Masters. Going to cost you a lot to get in by getting a ticket on the secondary market. But once you get in, the food in there is pretty cheap.
It's $2. $2 for a beer.
Wow.
$2 for a beer and $2 for a sandwich. I mean, I have a co-founder here that we go. I've been to a number of them. He's been there, and we always joke with the people we bring. I dare you to spend $20. You couldn't do it. I mean, it's $2 for a sandwich, $1 for an ice cream sandwich, $1 for a bag of chips, hot dogs $1. And I think hot dogs are $2 now. They raised the prices.
Ooh.
That is the one thing about it, that it's super fun when you get in there because it's not like anything else. And they do not allow your cell phone. If you get caught with a cell phone there, you're gone, and the badge that you're wearing, which you bought from somebody else who had to wait 30 years to get it, is taken back.
Ooh, man, be careful.
They actually don't. It's funny. The fans probably don't know. They actually don't do tickets at the Masters. They do badges. So if Scott gets a badge, let's say you wait your 30 years and you get a badge that says Scott Prather on it, right, and you've got it, and you sell me that badge, I actually have to come get the badge from you, the plastic badge, pin it on me, wear it to the event, and then bring it back to you. And if you lose it, it's some penalty. It's a couple $1,000 for you to get it replaced.
Jeez Louise. Well, one of these
very,
days,
very interesting event.
One of these days, I want to go. My bucket list is at some point in my life, I would love to go to the All England Club and experience Wimbledon. What's that like, Tony? What's Wimbledon like?
It's, people don't understand. Wimbledon is a lot smaller town than people think it is, right? It's a little sleepy town outside of London that when they don't have the tennis tournament, you would not think that anything major happens there. Augusta's the same way. Augusta National is in the middle of just a Midwestern town with a couple of Waffle Houses and a Hooters. Like, it's not a major city. So Wimbledon it's that way. It's very interesting. It's very proper. It's difficult to get into, but it's big enough that there's enough tickets to be had. It's not anywhere close to as expensive as the Masters. But the town of Wimbledon is smaller than you think it is.
Wow. One of these days.
Quaint little city.
One of these days, I just need to win the lotto or something first. Tony Knopp has been our guest. All right, man. Last point for you, and then we'll let you. Two more, because I've asked you this before. But something like a WrestleMania where this company goes and sort of takes over a city for 3 or 4 days in Orlando next month, coming back to New Orleans next year. What kind of economic boost does that bring to a city? And has it gotten a little bit bigger in recent years with that event in terms of the economic boost?
It has. It's not just about the economic impact at the actual event. It's what happens around it. It's the hotel blocks. It's all of the local celebrities, all of the local events companies, all of the local restaurants. It has a very significant effect, which is why they bid on it. And we haven't seen with the WWE and Super Bowl, we haven't seen it tip the other direction, right? With the Olympics, it's tipped the other direction. The cost has gotten so ridiculous for the town that they're not having the economic impact they need in response, and people are pulling out. There's only 2 bidders left for the 2024 Olympic Games.
Wow. And
one of the bidders is Paris, who has a measure on the ballot right now to not bid on the Games. So there is a legitimate chance that the only bidder on the 2024 Olympic Games is going to be Los Angeles. And that happened because they looked at these economic impacts that we were talking about here, and they kept trying to bid it up and up and up, and they've bid it beyond what it's worth. The WWE is nowhere close to that.
Wow. And lastly, we talked to you just before the Super Bowl this year. How was Houston as a host city for the Super Bowl? I think it was the 3rd time they hosted.
Houston always does well. It's a good city. It's set up well. They have enough for the convention and visitors set up that there's not really a cramp like there was for like Indianapolis, where you have to travel super far to get a room. It's just not a tropical destination, right? And the fact that it's not a tropical destination makes it, it's a median Super Bowl, right? It's going to do fairly okay. Whereas, you start talking about, and then we have Minnesota next year. So when you're talking about New Orleans, you're talking about Miami, you're talking about San Diego, you have a draw every time. People want to go to those cities anyways, regardless of whether there's a Super Bowl. And you add the Super Bowl to it, it becomes big.
I guess I just thought of one more thing. With Las Vegas potentially getting the Raiders soon, would it ever host a Super Bowl, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah. If they get a new stadium, then they're going to get a Super Bowl. That's kind of
That'd be wild.
The rule we've been seeing.
Right.
We know Los Angeles is going to get one, and then we'll see what happens with Vegas when they get a stadium. I mean, they break ground next year. We're still, what is it now? We're still 4, 5, 6 years away from them being able to host a Super Bowl. So it'll be a little while. We'll be talking about how the LA Olympics went by the time we're in the Super Bowl in Vegas.
Well, hopefully we're still talking to you about it then, Tony. I know you're very successful. Appreciate the time. We started, of course, talking about March Madness with the brackets and getting into tickets, but went into some other sports as well. Always interested to pick your brain. Thanks for the knowledge. He is the founder and CEO of Invite Manager. You can follow him on Twitter at Tony Knopp. Last name is Knopp. Tony, thanks for the time, man, and we'll catch up again, and probably sometime in the summer we'll pick your brain some more.
Looking forward to it.
All right, you got it. That is Tony Knopp.